Hello everyone and welcome to this special stick figure history episode. You see, I was looking through some of my old files and folders on my computer and I found some old files from before I started this channel. I found some test videos and some other animation that I had made, and I thought it could be fun to do a little video about how stick figure history got started. So, welcome to the history of stick figure history. I've actually made YouTube videos for around 10 years now on a couple of different channels. I did the typical gameplay videos that so many have done. I did a couple of list videos, some tutorial series, a sarcastic advice series, and some short reviews. Nothing really became popular, and when I look back at it now, it's fairly obvious that the reason for that was that it was not good. Some of it was alright, but I was still learning about how to edit, how to speak for my videos, and all of that. So, in the end, I decided that I wanted to do something different. I had learned to use animation software a few years before that, and I liked the idea of doing something with animation. At first, I thought that I would do an animated cartoon version of some comic strip that I had made in my teens. That quickly turned out to be both beyond my current skills, and it would be way too time-consuming. Then I had the idea to make animated movie reviews. It was a project that my brother and I wanted to do together, but once again, too time-consuming and too difficult for me with the animation skills I had at that point too. We barely got started with the intro and much less the actual content. Then I got the idea to animate some of the adventures that my local tabletop gaming group went through in our campaigns. Having learned from my previous experiences, I wanted to do something simpler, so make some simpler designs for the characters so that the animation process would become quicker, simpler, easier, and all that. It was a good idea, but it fell through as the group kinda sorta fell apart over time. The next idea I got was doing animated gaming reviews, and this project actually got a little bit off the ground. This time I knew to keep the design simple, to allow me to work on the content rather than the design. And this is actually where I designed my stick figures that I'm using today on Stick Figure History. Some of the first designs were not good, but they eventually got to where we are now. I actually managed to finish half of the video before burning out. As you may know, it takes quite a while to finish videos like this, and I had not expected it to be that time-consuming, so I just never finished the video. Looking back at it now, you can see some of the elements that would eventually evolve into stick figure history, but the video as a whole is very poorly done. The sound is bad, my articulation and speech is very fast-paced and not pleasant to listen to, and the flow of the video is all over the place. But at least it was a start, and I did end up using what I learned from this one for what would eventually go on to become this channel. Don't worry, you will be allowed to see the video, but to improve the flow of this current video, I've decided to place it at the end of this one. But then I saw an online post that a history lover had made about the death of King Richard. He had written in detail about everything that we know of the event, and I was so captivated by it that I immediately reached out to him and asked if he wanted to collaborate on a history-themed YouTube channel. He declined, but by that time I was so hooked on the idea that I simply went ahead and did it on my own. The first plan was to have a sort of back and forth banter going between me and him. I would be the narrator and he would be a character taking the form of a history book. And then the stick figures would be showcasing what was being talked about. It was a fairly decent idea, to be honest, and I had actually completely forgotten about it until I found the videos again. But you can judge for yourself how you like it. A little side note before I show you this clip. I never actually recorded voiceovers for this back then, so I had to do it now. The original idea, as mentioned, was to have him as a second person do the voice of the history book. But he didn't want to, and since I do work as a freelance voiceover artist now, and I never really get a chance to show off my voices on this channel, I'll be doing the voice myself. Maybe a couple of voices. Just because. History is filled with awesome stories, and this is one of the best. Everything you will see in this video is completely true. Except for the parts that are not. watching all of this is our hero, Peter.
Peter?
Yeah, well, you know, we don't really know his name, so I call him Peter.
You know, he was most likely called Pierre, and his surname may have been Basil or Basil or Basil or Basilius or even just Brew.
Yeah, well, since we don't really know it, I'll just call him Peter. It's easier to remember.
Fair enough. Some say he was just a teenager, but I've always pictured him as an adult male.
At this time, he probably didn't care what people called him. He probably didn't care about much beyond his immediate situation. He would have gazed out from the castle that afternoon. He would have seen the long lines of soldiers waiting to burst in and kill him. He would have seen the reinforced stockade that denoted where the mine had started. The mine where the enemy was digging down and under the castle. He would have seen the burned fields and scorched earth behind the siege. And he would have been afraid. And angry. As you can see, not exactly a bad format. But since I ended up working on this project by myself in the end, I decided to simply have a narrator over the videos and have the humor come mostly from the animation. But this is basically it. The history of stick figure history. It did take about a decade to come to where it is now, but everything that led up to it did teach me something that I'm using right now. Now, this wasn't a planned video, but I figured that it could be a good placeholder until the new one comes out, and the next one is actually progressing nicely and will probably be finished in a few months. Remember that you can always see the current progress of the next video on my Patreon. Also, if you want to see videos uploaded to the channel more frequently, the best way to help would be to consider pledging to me on Patreon. My ultimate goal for this channel would definitely be to be able to work on it full time and put out videos every month or maybe even every couple of weeks. And thank you so much to the ones who have already pledged to me. You've been my first patrons ever, and I could never even try to describe how ecstatic I was when I first saw the pledge. But now, as promised, please enjoy this very cringy stick figure review of Kingdom Come: Deliverance. Kingdom Come: Deliverance. Interesting, time-consuming, and thoroughly realistic. I mean, in what other game will you be totally and utterly turned down by a girl, even just to have a simple conversation, just because you're not wearing fine clothes and maybe stink a little bit? But then of course there's always the option to pay her to get her to pretend like she tolerates you. Now, come on Warhorse Studios, that hits some of us a little too close to home. So what can I say about Warhorse Studios' Kingdom Come? Well, as it turns out, a whole lot. First of all, it's a long game. I've been sitting at my computer almost every day for the past 2 weeks trying to finish it so that I could make this video only to throw in the towel and decide to simply make it into a 2-part video just so that I could finally get one video out about the game now. Of course, there is now the possibility that I've actually seen so much of the game already that I won't really have anything else to add, and we are all doomed to sit late at night, staring out into the rain, wondering about that one extra video that could have been. Oh, how it could have been. But until I actually manage to finish the game, here's everything you need to know so far in a weasel walkthrough of Kingdom Come. Possibly part 1. Right, with that out of the way, I feel the need to say that I've actually enjoyed the time I've spent playing the game these past 2 weeks. It's been a long time since the game has captivated me so much that I've enjoyed spending so much time with it as I've done with this one. And that's even more impressive when taking into account that the main storyline interests me about as much as cleaning out the cat's litter box with my bare hands. Given that, and all the small, let's call them quirks this game has, and there are a lot of them, it's no small feat that the game has managed to captivate me so much. Let's take a look at some of those quirks, shall we? It's very apparent from the get-go that they have focused a lot of realism in the game, and that's great! To a certain degree. I mean, I play games to escape from reality and feel superior to my own real self. I suck at archery in real life, and I don't really need to be reminded about that fact every time I wield a bow in the game. I mean, if a game is gonna mimic every aspect of the difficulties about aiming with a bow and arrow to the point where
I find it just as difficult to hit something in the game as I do in real life, I might as well do the real thing and get the benefit of getting some fresh air and exercise. But then again, that would mean that I would have to get out of my chair and actually go outside. Alright, I guess the game do have some significant advantages over real life after all. Something that frustrates me to no end is the fact that they won't let you interact with the dogs in the game. As lousy as the story in Watch Dogs 2 was, you could at least pet all the dogs and call them good boys. We want to do that in all the games. They're good dogs, Warhouse Studios. I think the first thing we all noticed when we started playing this game was that it has a very cheap feeling. It feels like a cheap game when you walk around, when you jump, when you get semi-stuck going up a flight of stairs, or when it looks like your arm stretches to pick up something instead of you moving closer to the object. My first thought was, this feels like Mount & Blade. And that's actually not either a bad comparison or such a bad thing, to be honest. Mount & Blade lacked a lot in this department as well, but it didn't matter because the quality of the rest of the game made up for it. At least the ones of us who like Mount & Blade think that. And it's definitely something that can be forgiven in this game as well if you adopt the same state of mind. But it admittedly feels very immersive breaking when you're watching those beautiful facial animations, and yet you can't stop staring at those hideous eyelashes of the protagonist.
I apologize for nothing.